It's exhibit 5 within. Just to make it extra confusing, if this is, yeah, it's exhibit 5 within exhibit 6, okay? You recognize that?
I'm sorry, you lost me here.
So within exhibit 6, you only need that one document. I'm not gonna ask you about other ones.
Page 41.
So you're not keeping. I have a blue page 41.
Yep.
At the bottom. You familiar with that note? You recognize
I'm looking at it for the first time, and I'm sure 3 years, but
that? Well, familiarize yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. So I see, this is from you, correct?
correct.
You, and then it's copied to a set of people, one of which is RJ Mancini. Okay,
Mhm.
and so within that note, it's making reference to Gene Schmidt's race. And I assume that's other resources. So were these resources giving support to Gene Schmidt's race?
They were simply updates.
Well, then why aren't all the races in there?
There might not have been changes in those other races for polling locations.
So you're saying that you were producing, so my understanding was, so our House of Representatives is how many people?
99,
So if, and they run how many, every 2 years, correct?
correct.
So that means there's 99 races every 2 years. Of those 99 races, I think your prior testimony is you were focusing on 8 to 10.
Correct.
Was Tom Young one of those 8 to 10?
He was.
Was Grendel one of those 8 to 10?
Yes.
Was Schmidt one of those 8 to 10?
Yes.
So again, I'll ask the question, were your resources supporting Jean Schmidt in her race that what you just said was one of the 8 to 10? But the answer was yes, they were.
We were monitoring her race. We were supportive of her campaign. Did specific resources go towards her in the form of a campaign manager? I don't recall us ever sending a campaign manager to her.
Well, but let me just then probe on this. You said that Jeff Longstreth and Megan Fitzmartin and Stephen Caraway were doing things and you were doing certain things. And ones were more doing these more strategic things. And then you had the people that were door knocking. Wouldn't the change potentially supporting or having door knockers work with a certain candidate be something that it would be a strategy you guys would be doing, and then you tell people versus you just call, we're just going to randomly update you on a candidate that we're not working with?
I'm not sure I follow the question.
So you're of these 3 candidates in this list, you acknowledge that 2 of them had campaign managers doing door knocking and potentially other activities. Is that a fair statement?
I remember Representative Grendel having one. Truthfully, I don't remember if we had a campaign manager for Representative Young.
Okay.
We might have had somebody, a volunteer of some kind. I don't know.
So then your assertion would be that this email is across the state. Any candidate that had a change in polling location summary?
Of the races we were looking at, these must have had some kind of polling location change. And so I wanted to make sure that people were aware. Yes.
Okay. What do you mean by, define the term looking at, the races we were looking at?
The races that the speaker had a specific candidate in mind to win.
Okay, and then but you're saying that I'm just trying to connect what you're saying is that this note, would it be a fair statement that your representation is, this doesn't mean we were or were not anybody was doing any door knocking for Gene Schmidt. You can't tell from this email.
This email has nothing to do with door knocking. The folks that I sent this email to were our campaign managers. And so I was updating them loosely on what changes might be happening
Okay,
and that other changes could happen. So please keep tabs on polling locations.
okay. So on that list of people up above, Brandon Hendrickson, are all those people, to your knowledge, ORP paid resources?
With the exception of Luke Householder, I don't remember if he was reimbursed at all or who would have paid him. I don't remember, but the rest of them, I believe, were paid by ORP.
Okay, and then how did you get hooked up with Supervisor Luke Householder?
The speaker wanted to give his son some expertise, some experience campaigning.
And where was Luke Householder assigned by you?
He was originally assigned to Alan Freeman's campaign, so he had to be moved
Why did he have to be moved?
for his own personal safety
Why?
because you were stalking him at his hotel.
I was stalking him. Have I ever been charged with stalking somebody?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, so you made a representation. Would it be a fair characterization that I got tipped off and took a picture of him coming back and forth to a hotel one
I don't
time?
think that he can speak to that, to know whether you were tipped off or not. So I don't.
Well,
think
he's
that's-
obviously familiar. So describe for me what you actually know, not what you, so describe for me what you know versus that I was doing some criminal act supposedly.
I know.
I don't
that
think
you-
there's an object to the use of the criminal. There's, doesn't necessarily mean there was a criminal stalking.
It certainly implies what he
Stalking
said.
is a dictionary.
I object to the use of the term stalking relating to me. It's a characterization. not a
Okay, we
fact.
will, that is, I will sustain that we are not gonna use that term.
Thank you.
Okay,
My
so,
apologies.
so let's take that out of our questioning or our responses and let's, you can rephrase or move forward, please.
So what, you said he had to be moved. What actually, fact only, not, adjectives and adverbs and, what happened with Luke Householder that precipitated him being moved?
From what I recall, there was a Facebook post from your account that was in front of his truck or his hotel, one of the two. And we, as a team, felt uncomfortable with that.
Okay, and you felt uncomfortable because you felt I was a threat to his safety?
Correct.
Okay, did you at all feel uncomfortable that Larry Householder's involvement with the races was a big issue? And so his son being there was creating political consternation for the candidates?
I don't follow the question.
Did any of your discussions involve the concept that it was politically damaging and he became a liability to the candidates because in a race that involved Householder and dark money and all this sort of stuff, the fact the speaker's son was roaming around the districts, the two districts, became a political liability? Did that discussion or anything like that ever take place?
Object because it obvious questions, assuming facts that aren't in evidence.
I hear what you're saying, and I don't necessarily disagree with it, but I'll let him answer the question.
Luke was, I believe, 19 years old at the time. He was simply getting experience knocking doors. Nobody knew who he was. He was just a kid trying to get some campaign experience.
Okay. Do you know where he was, that picture, you're familiar with the picture, where he was staying?
I don't recall the place.
Was it a home, a residence, or a hotel,
It
or,
was a hotel, motel,
okay.
Holiday.
Do you know, and you provided supervision to Luke Householder, who was paying his hotel bill?
I don't recall.
So you don't, so
I don't recall.
you have no knowledge of who was paying his hotel bill,
Correct.
but you assigned him to go to that area,
Yes.
okay? And obviously he would have needed a hotel.
Mhm.
Did you have any discussion with him or anybody else on who was going to pay for the travel and lodging expenses?
Not that I recall. I'm sure somebody.
Well, who other than you would have had that discussion with them?
I would have told him, I would have been the one who set him up in the hotel, who actually paid for the hotel. I do not know the answer to that.
Okay. Did Stephen Caraway have involvement with him being put in that hotel?
Not to my knowledge, no.
If I told you that Stephen Caraway told me that he was involved in putting him in that hotel, would you have reason
It
to?
wouldn't be.
Objection, but Stephen Caraway allegedly told Mr.
Dave, that's your say.
Okay, so, but you would acknowledge that somebody, it could have been Luke, somebody had to be paying his hotel bill.
I hope somebody paid that hotel.
It's a pretty Fleabag hotel, so you could probably dash out without. By the way, do you remember the context of the post? You, obviously this post made you feel unsafe, for his safety and so forth. Do you remember the context of the post? What was highlighted in the post?
I do not.
Okay. All right. If you go back to that same document, Exhibit 3, and within Exhibit 6 or whatever one, there's an exhibit titled Exhibit 3. Okay, so Exhibit 3 at the top is a note from who?
That is from Stephen Caraway.
Okay. And what's it directing?
It is not directing anything, but he is letting RJ know that he is being added to Shane's Facebook page.
Okay, and so that was one of the functions you described that not all, but some of these 8 to 10 people did.
Yes,
Okay, so. And you were copied on this note correctly, correct?
correct.
So were you not then aware that RJ Mancini was doing something for Gene Schmidt?
I don't know if he ever made a post. I don't recall what this email is actually about, other than him being added to her Facebook.
Okay, so right below that is another note, because this was part of a stream.
Mhm.
And that note is from you. The one above it's from Stephen Caraway. And then what is it directing?
To get pictures and video of, looks like there was a Miami Township Committee meeting.
Okay. And who, of pictures and video of who?
Of candidates in the race.
Of what race?
I don't remember the district, but the race that Gene Schmidt was part of.
Is it just for sake of time here? Does it not say Schmidt, Dills, and Blevins? Is that what it says?
Yes,
And of those 3 candidates, which one of them was endorsed by the speaker?
Representative Schmidt.
Which one of them was endorsed by the ORP?
Don't recall.
Mr. Schmidt, he'll answer the questions. Okay, so, and were any of them endorsed by the ORP?
I don't recall.
So were there any cases where you had people supporting a candidate other than the one that was endorsed by the ORP?
I don't recall.
Were you aware of the difference between candidates endorsed by the ORP versus not?
I would have at the time, but I don't recall who was and who wasn't.
Okay, so we know Ms. Schmidt, she's here. Do you recall Dills and Blevins and who they were?
A little bit, but it's been a couple of years, so
Were either of those 2 people running against Alan Freeman?
don't believe so. I believe they were both running against Representative Schmidt, but I don't recall.
Okay, so are you not here directing that services be provided to Gene Schmidt in a race against Joe Dills and Dylan Blevins?
Yes, I was directing pictures to be taken.
Okay, so doesn't that mean that RJ Mancini was in fact doing work at your direction for Gene Schmidt?
We may have had him do something here or there just because we didn't have anybody else to to fulfill that role, but I don't recall.
I'm just making a factual statement, so I'd like a yes or no answer. I think I'm trying to nail it down to the truth and the facts. Yes or no?
Objection, move to strike his editorial comments.
Okay, you can put up sustain on ask your question.
So, yes or no? Does this note not show you directly giving instruction to provide support to Gene Schmidt?
Yes.
So, okay. I'll stop there, that one. Those notes were from, I believe these notes were from some discovery from RJ Mancini, where I only received a couple of notes. Do you believe that were there other times when you had similar direction relating to doing something or supporting the Schmidt campaign?
Can you repeat the question, please?
So I just am making a background and then the question, so I want to be clear. So I got, just for your knowledge, these two emails that I highlighted came through RJ Mancini and Discovery and RJ Mancini in a prior. And that's the only, I got a very narrow scope of any information. My question to you is, were there other times where you made emails that I might not be aware of otherwise that were directing RJ Mancini to do something for Gene Schmidt?
I don't recall.
Okay. Do you believe that was the one and only instance of you ever directing them to do something for Gene Schmidt? Or him to do something for Gene Schmidt?
It is certainly possible, but I don't recall.
Is it also then, since you said it's possible, is it also possible that on a lot of other times you gave direction to do something for Gene Schmidt?
No.
Is that possible?
If it was more than once, it would be a small handful of times.
So it could be a small handful of times.
We did
Okay.
not have a lot of resources in the form of a campaign. We had no campaign manager.
Are you aware of RJ Mancini supporting any candidate? And we can argue about the degree that he supported Gene Schmidt, but any candidate other than Alan Freeman or Gene Schmidt?
Other than Alan Freeman or Gene Schmidt, not to my knowledge.
Okay. When Luke Householder got moved out of the motel, where did he go?
Somewhere in one of the races in the Dayton area, but I don't remember which one.
Okay, and then again, do you have personal knowledge that he stayed in a motel in Dayton then?
We would have set him up in something else, but I don't remember.
I remember it was like somebody's personal home or something.
I believe it was a hotel.
Okay. The door knocking. Yeah, I think your prior testimony was that one of the responsibilities was that these people would be, I guess if they hit the skills, to try to get other volunteers to door knock.
Mhm.
Okay. And did that count against their 1,000 quota? Okay, so they had to personally door knock 1,000.
Well, the goal was to get 1,000 doors. That was the minimum.
A week, but let's pretend you're familiar with Huckleberry Finn,
Well,
Go on.
like Mark Twain Huckleberry Finn. So,
Heard of them.
so the concept of, if you can go get a bunch of people to go door knock, like paint the fence, and then I don't actually do any door knocking, but I blow the quota away because I got a bunch of volunteers to go do it for me. That would be, in the Huckleberry Finn world, that would be a thumbs up. And so were there any of your people that you thought were particularly skilled at doing that type of thing? That would try to get, volunteers, groups of volunteers to go door knock to extend their reach?
They were tasked to go get volunteers and to knock as many doors as possible.
And how would they get volunteers and how would they coordinate them?
Reach out to your personal networks, the candidates networks, just however you can, local college Republican clubs.
Did you ever attend any of these, any volunteer door knocking event during this cycle? Okay.
Absolutely.
Describe for me real quick, what would typically be how this would be orchestrated?
So candidate A, we need to call them a Super Saturday. We would try to get volunteers from either locally in the area or You know, it was a weekend, so if there was house staff who was, had a free weekend, we'd drive them and meet in a parking lot and have donuts and go knock doors in the area.
Who provided the donuts typically?
The local donut shop.
Sorry.
Dunkin'.
Who paid for the donuts typically?
Myself, I would do it at times. Sometimes the candidate would do it. Just depends. Wasn't a rule of thumb.
Okay. So one of the models for this would be that the candidate would provide donuts and say you meet up in whatever, the Lowe's parking lot or whatever. Have some donuts, I assume there's coffee too and orange juice, and then you go dispatch people to door knock.
Mhm.
If they were volunteers, apart from these people, you know, or staff from the house or something, how did they get direction as to where to go?
So on the app, you can choose from a series of walkbooks. So I would say you go to walkbook 1, then you go to walkbook 2.
So were all of these people that were doing this using that app that you talked about?
Mhm.
Okay,
Some of them would prefer paper walkbooks. So if we knew that ahead of time, we would do that.
would you do that from like a local board of elections site, or you had your own
You
capability
could
to
do
print
it
a
from the
walkbook?
app, but that was, I believe, most board of elections had that capability as well.
Okay, but your personal approach to that, was it go to a board of elections or use the app, use the system of which the app was a part of?
The campaign software,
You would use the campaign software to develop those lists?
but yeah,
When those events were gonna take place, and let's say you projected that, you know, 10 volunteers are gonna show up. So that means I'm gonna have 10 people, I need to tell them where to go, okay? When you bring the 10 people and tell them where to go, were you the one who would use somebody else, or who would be the person who would say like, well, we're anticipating 10. We need to have them, we need to have, you know, whatever, we need enough donuts for 10,
Mhm.
the app for 10, the printouts for, you know, whatever. Was that you doing that pre-planning, or these individual door knockers?
it was a coordination with myself and the campaign manager.
The door knocker, the campaign manager that was in essence mostly a door knocker.
Yes,
And then and how many of those do you think you took part in?
about 8 to 10,
Okay, so like once per candidate, like a first time, and then
at least,
But-
but yeah.
let them. Did you participate in one of those for Alan Freeman?
Yeah,
Did you participate in one of those for Gene Schmidt?
I don't recall.
Okay,
I probably did, but
you probably did.
her race was in better shape than Alan's was, so
Okay,
if I was down in that area, I was probably knocking for Alan.
and when you did that, would you have done it alongside RJ Mancini?
Yeah.
Okay, so so how many times would you say, well, I guess it would only be one help. So you would say that you said you only did 8 to 10 of those, where you personally attended?
Hmm.
Okay, and so by that standard, unless you really focus on Gene Schmidt, in your testimony that you probably only did one of those for Gene Schmidt?
Yeah, that would be accurate.
Okay. And do you remember if, one of the common things is to take pictures?
Mhm.
You know, because part of what they go on social media, like, look at the big team going out.
Yeah.
Do you remember taking those kind of pictures?
I remembered those pictures being taken.
Do you think there were pictures taken when Gene Schmidt did those events?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have those pictures?
That's my knowledge.
Would anybody have those pictures at this point?
If there was a campaign event, I'm sure there was a picture taken, but I couldn't tell you who would have the picture on their phone.
I apologize, but I'd like to ask Ms. Fitzmartin to leave the room. I forgot, because we should be having witness separation.
Okay.
And I just looked back and saw her there and I thought, oh, she's not supposed to be sitting in here right now.
There's no motion to separate, that I am aware of.
I'll make a motion to separate.
Or she's been here just for the record throughout the time.
It gets set out.
But if you request separation, you'd ask.
No, I think that's right.
Okay, okay. When you did these knock events that you participated in, did Steve Caraway participate in some, or at least some of them?
At least some of them, yeah.
Okay, and you don't, at this point, I mean, it's been a while ago, do you have any? I'll ask the question, but do do you have any specific memory of individual events, or is it all kind of a blur to you at this point?
It's a bit of a blur, but something might jump out.
Okay, so do you think that when you might have done, or you did one, at least one event with Gene Schmidt, that Steve Caraway was there?
Yeah, maybe. I don't.
I don't want you to say something about, like maybe it's not a definitive,
I
like
can't say for
you
certain.
can't say for certain. I would assume it's been a while, like even I would not remember who was there, on a specific event. Okay. Last thing is on that exhibit, you probably still have it in your hand. Those people that were, so it's exhibit 6. And then within it, there's an exhibit 3, I think. Of those people that are listed in exhibit 5, within there, exhibit 5. Okay, so it says page 41 at the bottom. Do you remember what candidates any of those other people were working with?
Yeah, Brandon Hendrickson worked for Representative Grindell.
Get Mancini, we don't know.
And Will Armbruster, if I remember correctly, was with Representative Young.
And did you ever provide any information to either candidates or to Anna Lippincott, which I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, did financial type stuff, on how much time each of these people were spending with individual candidates?
I mean, it wasn't like billable hours, but can you repeat the question?
Did you ever provide either the candidate or Anna Lip or somebody in Constant or in JPL and Associates? Did you ever provide them with the information on how much time or effort each of these people was spending with each candidate?
That was not a top.
Are you aware of in-kind reporting requirements?
I know it exists. I am not a financial person, so I don't know all that entails that.
Okay, if I said, what do you think the in-kind reporting requirements are for a political candidate? What would your answer be?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know.
Who within JPL and Associates or the HRCC?
That would have been Anna.
Anna would have known that? Did Anna ever ask you for information on what candidates these people were working with?
Well, I mean, we set candidates or campaign managers up with specific candidates, so she would know that this candidate or this campaign manager is working for this candidate.
Okay. But, and you're saying that you were never asked, nobody ever asked about a division of time for a particular resource, like they spent half their time with this candidate, half with this one.
Not to my recollection.
And to your experience, would it be fair to say you're not generally familiar with what the campaign finance reporting requirements are?
Correct.
For that? Okay. Did the ORP ever provide you with any education as to what the reporting requirements were?
No.
Did you ever ask for any information on what the reporting
I
requirements?
did not.
Okay. At this point, what did you say? What did you say your job was now?
Now, I
Yeah.
work for the Ohio House of Representatives.
And what role and who do you work?
I work for the Majority Caucus as a policy advisor.
Now, is there a specific person you say, this is my boss?
Yes.
Are you familiar with, it's been, years. Are you now familiar with the in-kind reporting requirements for candidates or not?
No.
Okay. Immediately following your tenure in the 2020, when did your work with the HRCC end?
About June 29th, thereabouts.
So at the conclusion of the extended primary, basically, not the general.
Whenever the indictment or the arrest of Speaker Householder took place.
Were you, as part of that indictment you just referenced, were your records sought by anybody as part of that?
Nobody ever reached out to me.
Okay, so, and when that happened, before that happened, did you have any personal suspicions that something improper or untoward was happening
Never once.
in campaign finance? Okay, And after that point, after the indictment, since then, have you come to realize, you know, how you can like, whoa, now I realize that I didn't realize that, but now I'm seeing some things. Did you have any revelations like that afterwards? So in your mind, you never saw anything that was questionable from a campaign finance standpoint?
Correct.
Okay, but by your admission, you're not familiar with the in-kind reporting requirements in campaign finance. Okay. And did you have any significant rules that would involve compensated activities, you know, other than resources? You'd have like things like mailers, commercials, you know, that kind of stuff. Did you have any role in compensated activities that were other than, you know, as far as you understand, other than these campaign manager door knockers?
With the exception of sometimes I would help write mailers because Megan wanted to give me experience and some other things, but other than helping draft some mailers, that sort of thing, I had very little role in anything else. I was the field guy.
Okay. And where, I'm not trying to, you know, like, were at the time, I don't care where you live now, but were you like located in a particular area, like Central Columbus, because that was the hub? How many meetings did you participate in with like the speaker on this?
Oh, God, I was only face to face with Speaker Householder a handful of times.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then the people you were working with mostly were Megan and Anna and,
Mr. Longstreth.
Mr. Longstreth. Okay.
Correct.
And how many meetings with Mr. Longstreth would you say you attended?
I mean, I saw him on a day-to-day, on a regular basis, but as far as meetings go, other than, I don't recall specific meetings, but
Okay.
I'm sure we had strategy sessions or something like that.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Now, he asked you questions. You're not that easy.
That was really slick.
No, I will be quick, however, unlike,
Again, editorial.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Mr. Wolf, based on your direct examination, you had no knowledge of any in-kind reports for any of the candidates in those House primaries, correct? Including no knowledge about in-kind notices to Gene Schmidt, correct? And Exhibit 3 that Mr. Hicks asked you about is a email from Mr. Caraway to a number of people, including you. It said that Mr. Mancini had been added as a poster on Ms. Schmidt's Facebook page. You recollect that?
Correct, yeah.
And as far as you know, did Mr. Mancini ever post anything on her Facebook page?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, and
Objection, this is, unless you have, not that my knowledge is a generalization answer. The answer is either you know or you don't know.
it is, I'd move to strike. I don't think you're running this show.
I'm allowed to make an objection, not.
Okay. Answer the question. Do you or not?
Do I or not recall?
Did you, I think you question, if I could repeat.
I
it,
do not know.
Is, you know, do you know or not know whether or not Mr. Mancini posted on Ms. Schmidt's
I
page?
do not know.
You do not,
Correct.
correct? The other thing is the March 12th email from you to a group of people,
Mhm.
including Mr. Mancini, advising him of polling location changes in Claremont County, including as it relates to Ms. Schmidt's campaign. That was for the March 17th primary date, correct?
Yes. Correct.
If you need to look at it, go ahead and look at it. It was the March 12th email saying polling locations have been changed. Please check, please update. From your participation in their primary, there was no primary on March 17th. It was canceled, correct?
Correct.
So that notice to people about change in polling locations certainly is irrelevant in your mind. Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I knew the question. Thank you, sir.
Any questions from commissioners?
Yeah. Going, Mr. Rolfe, going back to exhibit 5 that Mr. O'Brien was just talking about. Where we have Young, Schmidt and Grendel on the locations. I guess my question is, if the Republican Party didn't endorse Mr. Schmidt, then why For your testimony, why were you monitoring her race?
because she was endorsed by Speaker Householder.
Okay, thank you.
One question. Same email. You mentioned it was about polling locations, which clearly is, but the last sentence below is a list of those changes in that will affect our teams. So what was the effect? How would that implies to me that it was going to impact some activity, right? It wasn't just an update of point of location, it was going to impact an activity of the team. What activities was going to impact?
Relevant activities would be making sure that folks who were in that voting precinct knew, so when you're knocking doors, that you could let people know that their voting location had changed, or if you were going to pass out campaign literature, of course, 100 feet away at the polling location, to make sure that our campaign managers knew not to go to this location if they were going to go to that one.
Okay, thank you.
Questions? Both are done.
No cross.
Yeah, I have no other questions.
Now you're dismissed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're,
Excused.
Yeah.
I would prefer this
Excuse,
witness
sorry.
not be excused,
Oh,
which means he can leave, but I could recall him later.
Basis?
Because I think there might be subsequent testimony from Stephen Caraway that will cause there to be additional questions for Mr. Mancini. Not
That's
Mr. Mancini,
Mr.
Mr. Rolfe, I'm sorry, Mr. Rolfe.
I believe they ought to be asked here today. I mean, Mr.
I have to hear Mr. Caraway's testimony first. There's been some testimony here and there's emails on which he was copied. And it would be normal for me to be able to recall the witness. What is a exception is that you can excuse them saying, I'm giving up my right to recall a witness.
You may be dismissed, you may be recalled. No,
No, that's true.
thank you. Okay, so it's 4:56. We have 4 minutes. What would you like to do?
If you have a hard stop at 5, I would say we have a hard stop because my
Well, it's a
question
hard
is
stop.
probably the same time range as is for Mr. Rolfe.
I think, public access to the building kind of limits to a degree. I mean, certainly, and I know we have other commission members that have certain things going on. And so I think 5 o'clock is probably a good cutoff time. I'm going to suggest that this matter be continued to September 14th.
I'm probably gonna be in session then.
You'll be up in Columbus.
Okay, well, I mean,
Like the.
The editorial of it.
Can I just say something? No, okay, you do the talking.
Well, at least this is, as the commissioners are well aware, it's been going on for 1.5 years, and at least I thought we would be able to get it through it last time. We didn't. We are now unable to finish today. I'm just wondering, I don't know, I assume it'll be either between now and September 14. I guess I would just like to urge the commission to.
there
Build in
are
on the text
meetings,
here.
but there are members that can't be present during some of the.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
And I object to the characterization that this has gone on for 1.5 years. This has gone on since May 4th.
Okay,
Okay,
all right, so
so-
we understand your position. Thank you.
We adjourn.
I mean, sure.
Set the meeting time, let me know. We're done.
Yeah, I mean, that's my inclination, is because, as I look at the commission schedule up ahead, that's the next available date that would seem appropriate. That's why I'm saying September 14th. So I appreciate your concerns, Ms. Schmidt. We'll just have to work around this.
Okay.
At this point, with no further business before the commission, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Post same sign. Motion carries with a vote of 7-0. Be careful, don't speed.
Yeah, particularly after all that.
Oh, yeah, you're going to.
If everyone wants to leave their exhibits, like in the binders and everything, that way we've got them for next time. It's drive safe. So that,
Thanks for the meal.
absolutely, no.
I think. So,
It just makes it a little bit easier for the next meeting that I
Yeah.
would set them out and it's not rushing at 9:30 to make a copy.
makes sense.
Well, exactly, add to them and
Okay, so I'm leaving mine too. So you're in charge of my purple folder.
okie dokie.
Okay. Don't mess with my pretty purple folder. I spent $34 making copies yesterday. Oh my goodness. Yeah.